How's everybody doing today? Good. See, the energy levels are extra high after the coffee after the lunch that we just had. So if I may be so bold and ask everybody just to humor me for a second, we've got an amazing panel. I need to make sure everybody's engaged, everybody's taking notes, either on their phones or at least pretend to be taking notes on their phones while they're on Instagram. But can we have everybody please, just for about 15 seconds, just stand up for a second. Can I get everyone to stand up, please? Stand up, stand up, stand up. Great, do a quick stretch, get ready, get in the zone. Could we please give an applause to the organizers of this conference for this amazing conference? And please give yourselves a round of applause for standing up and joining us today. All right, that was my bit. We're done. Please have a seat. Thank you very much. So we got an interesting panel today. First off, one of the panelists had to go on an emergency. It was Mr. Hossein Dajani from Nissan. He got called back to their head office in Jebel Ali about 5 minutes ago? So he apologizes. But that doesn't really take away from the panel because we've got amazing panelists coming up. So I'm going to ask you to hold your applause while I call up the panelists. Okay. Once they're here, we're going to do one of those applauses like the one we just did about, what was it, a minute ago, 2 minutes ago, 3 minutes ago, something like that. So first off, could I ask Tarek Boulaghi, head of Middle East for EasyMile, to come up, please? Tarek is an experienced professional in transportation and mobility, working towards innovative driverless solutions. Please have a seat here. And he came over from Airbus, so he's brought a lot of interesting ideas into this space, and he's working out of Toulouse, EasyMile there, and doing some really interesting things. Okay, next up we have Alan Whaley, chairman of Amina Automotive Association. He's a colleague of mine, but he's also an automotive veteran, 30 years in the industry. He worked in the UK and Middle East, both in C-level positions in the automotive industry and as a consultant. And over a year ago, he started the region's first independent automotive association. And finally, we have Ryan Dawood from Careem. He's AGM at Careem. Ryan is an INSEAD graduate, former venture capitalist, and he brings a really fresh perspective to mobility and the future of mobility. Please give it up for the panel, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. All right. Can everybody hear us, by the way? I know you can hear me, but we'll find out. So Ryan, why don't we start off with you? Could we get everyone, starting with you, Ryan, in the time it takes to do an Instagram story? How long is an Instagram story these days? Anybody know?
Depends who's taking the story.
Exactly. But let's go with 15 seconds, which is their thing. So can you maybe, with 15 seconds, share a little bit about what you do within Careem, and then we're just going to go down.
Sure. So I'm the assistant general manager for the UAE, which means I look after everything ranging from ride-hailing to some of the new solutions that we're exploring across this market. We've launched a couple new initiatives such as roadside assistance. We're exploring other things along those lines to add value to our customers beyond our traditional ride-hailing capabilities.
Fantastic. Alan?
Do
you have Instagram, Alan, or are you a LinkedIn guy?
I believe Instagram and Facebook, they love our generation at 50 because we can't flick too quickly. So here we go like this. We started Amina about 9 months ago, as you know. And the main reason is because wherever we're around the world, people said to us, well, the Middle East is a nice emerging market. And that really annoyed us. We're not an emerging market. We're a very well-established market. And as the industry is going through its biggest revolution, I just felt that we need to get everybody together to raise the standards and to have a really good base that we can launch the new automotive mobility from.
Great. Tarek?
Hello, everybody. As you said earlier, I joined EasyMile about a year ago. I used to work for Airbus before, and why I joined, because I believed in a new project in innovative field, and that would make such change to the future, even in terms of mobility, environment, and those are the ideas we're trying to keep with an EasyMile wherever we go, actually. And I'm in charge of developing the Middle East, and quite different than the European market, I'd say, but that's the fun of it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, gentlemen, we're going to start off today's discussion. I like to keep it a little bit loose and relaxed, so we're going to start off a little bit high level, talking about a couple of high level things, and then we're going to zoom in with very specific questions. No rapid fires anymore. That Instagram story was the only rapid fire one today. But let's talk about transportation and how we all know it's getting disrupted, mobility is getting disrupted, but let's rewind 100 years ago. And when we look at the last major disruption in mobility, people first looked at cars or trucks and all these kind of things as novelties and new things. But what happened is, over the course of decades, we've had entire infrastructures being created, entire industries being created, and completely different ways of people moving around. Suburbia was created, fast food restaurants by the highway were created. All these things came as a result of this disruption. So it's interesting because now we're again at the verge of another big inflection point, another disruption coming. And it's really easy to get lost also at the same time with all the trends. Now, I want to be a little bit, kind of look at what do you guys see as some of the trends in a 3-year horizon when it comes to the future of mobility, some of the trends that will impact the region and impact us, as we move forward in this space. Anybody who wants to start can take it.
Yeah, I'd love to. What we can see, generally speaking, is that if you speak about Europe, people want to take their own cars less and less. The issue, as you said, cities have been built for dozens, 100 years now, around the fact that everybody owns a car or should own a car, and you need to dedicate enough space for cars to be able to run. Even that you have traffic congestions all over the big cities, you need to dedicate places for parking. So the idea is that now people are trying to shift their mentality into how can I travel or have my work to home journey in a more shared way, and to make that a sustainable model, autonomous is something. It's not the solution, I'd say. I don't have the pretension to say that, but it will help a lot. And cities need to adjust in terms of infrastructure to accommodate that type of transportation and the first last mile thing.
Okay, great. Ryan, do you want to?
Yeah, to add on to that, I think many of us that live in Dubai have seen the scooters all over the city. And the emergence of micro-mobility solutions in the city has been something that's come about, I mean, in my view, the last 6 months, year. And so I have a lot of colleagues, friends who I've seen kind of transition away. They have cars, they own cars. Now they're making more use of public transportation, so they may use a scooter as first and last mile, but they may take the metro to work or to wherever they need to go. They may also incorporate, ride-hailing into a 2 or 3 step journey. So they may take the Kirim to the metro stop and then take the metro onward from there. So I think that's something that's coming to our region in a big way, and I think it's something we're super focused on as a novelty, but it's actually part of a broader solution.
So what you're saying is, rather than looking at just having one car, one thing you get from A to B, you're actually looking at a chain of
absolutely.
solutions.
Multimodal transport, right? I personally own a car. I am lucky enough to live close to a metro station, so I take the metro every day to work because it's easier, because I avoid the traffic on Sheikh Zayed. And we're very lucky here in Dubai that the government has invested in fantastic infrastructure, and it works quite well, and it's very reliable. Other countries in the Middle East don't have that luxury, but here we do, and I think we should take advantage of it.
Fantastic. Alan, in your role, you talk to a lot of companies who have been very comfortable for the last few decades, I would say, in the region. We can call them incumbents,
Yep.
Now, as the value chain, as these macroeconomic forces are changing the value chain, and it's actually turning the value chain upside down, what impact do you see coming, or are they seeing the impacts coming? And also, what does it mean for new players, as we move forward into this future?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of the, if you look at the business model in the Middle East, a lot of it is the middle enterprise or the middleman. What happens is, if you look at Blockbuster, people are still producing TVs, films, series, soap operas. People are still consuming them. What changed is the middle bit. Instead of Blockbuster delivering it, Netflix delivered it and did it a much better job. Same with Toys R Us. People are still buying toys, but they don't buy it from Toys R Us, they buy it from Amazon. And the list goes on. At this moment in time, we take more pictures of ourselves and selfies than throughout the history of mankind. But we don't use them or we don't share them through Kodak, we share them through Instagram. So fundamentally, the business model for the dealers and importers in the Middle East as being the middle enterprise, that needs to be reevaluated. And I think they're starting to recognize that, and they need to carve themselves a different niche, because as it is, it's just not going to work.
What about the sentiment, though? What's the sentiment? They see the change coming, or what is it? We can't say what they say to you, of course, but what's the overall sentiment you've gathered from the industry? Because you've been in it, you talk to them.
I think it's taken them a long, long time to come out, to let go of the past. But I think eventually they're starting to recognize that. Because what's happening, the speed and the velocity of these new developments are coming, it's amazingly fast. You know, what we thought is a dream, or what we thought is going to come out in 2035, it's virtually available in the vehicles.
Okay. Tarek, when we talk about this, there's obviously a kind of a digital and a physical infrastructure that is important to make autonomous vehicles, for example, happen.
Yeah.
You know, I remember we had a conversation earlier. You mentioned that, for example, in Toulouse, where you
Yeah.
guys are based in, there's a whole space for autonomous vehicles to be tested and these kind of things. What are Dubai's strengths in this area, and where do we need to make improvements so that we can move towards this kind of the future of mobility and these innovations?
To give you an idea of our interaction with Dubai up until now, it was mainly with the RTA. Started a few years ago. RTA was eager to understand the technology, so we did some demos with them at the Boulevard, Dubai Downtown, at Business Bay, at World Trade Center. And they acquired the vehicle from us about a year-ish ago. And it's clear, actually, for RTA, their aim is not to use that particular vehicle for some kind of a real and immediate mobility service, as it is, but it's for them a way to understand the technology enough for them to be able to certify it or approve it to run on open roads or closed campuses and so on in Dubai. And the second thing is for them to be able to understand how this technology would actually influence the way you build roads in the future. Today, I'd say the most immediate use cases we can find in Dubai for autonomous shuttles, I'd say, because it's the most immediate one, would be for business campuses, gated communities. But the idea is for those types of transportation systems to act in a city like Dubai as a feeder for the metro system. Dubai has what is a really beautiful metro system. However, there's a station every 2.5 kilometers. To give you an example, the metro in Paris, which is, could say anything about it, but the good thing about it is there's a good meshing. There's a station every 600 meters. The idea is that microtransit will help even bring more people to mass transit solutions. And the RTA and probably other private entities in Dubai as well are interested, and especially the real estate market, are interested in understanding how this particular type of technology would and shall influence them thinking tomorrow's infrastructure. We're talking about less parking space. We're talking about probably dedicated lane, as we see in Europe for buses. You encourage people to travel in a shared way. We're talking about more space you can gain in something else, as in autonomous vehicles do not need signs. So the space you dedicate to science, you can use it somewhere else, helping the community, building green spaces, and so on.
Great. So Ryan, you know I'm coming to you. We talk about infrastructure. What's interesting about Kareem is you both created because of what Kareem does.
Sure.
You've created a lot of infrastructure, but you also rely on a lot of infrastructure. So you have a perspective from both sides. Do you want to maybe share a little bit what this means as we move forward in this space?
Yeah, I think there needs to be continued investment in hard infrastructure and soft infrastructure, right? So, I mean, what Tarek said was perfect. They've done a really good job in building out both the metro and you know, looking towards the future to consider what needs to be done for building out these roads. But they're also doing things like investing in bike paths throughout the city. And that's really important, especially going back to the point on first and last mile mobility. Then there's the soft infrastructure, and they've really thought about, okay, how do we collect all this data to continue planning, to building out these roads, understanding where the demand is. And for that, they have and need to continue partnering with local technology companies to make sure that they have all the pieces in line. And that's something that, the JV is a great example for, the joint venture between Kareem and the RTA. So that was very forward-thinking on their part in terms of how can we leverage technology and the assets and expertise of the local government to move into the future of mobility.
You mentioned first mile and last mile as well. As you said, there's a chain now of basically of mobility kind of happening there. What role that you can share, of course, do you see Kareem or others like Kareem? What role might they play in this future in that chain?
Yeah.
Would it be one provider providing all the elements, or how do you see those integrations kind of happening?
Look, for Kareem, we're exploring all options, all sorts of mobility solutions, so nothing's really off the table for us. I've seen a number of players emerge that are hyper-focused on one mode of transport, and I've seen others trying to do everything at once. Not so much locally, but globally. And I think everybody's seen those trends. So for us, we're going to continue exploring and invest in what makes sense and where we think that we can simplify and improve the lives of the people of the region. So yeah, I think that's how we take it forward.
Back to you, Tarek.
Yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
I'm skipping over you. So first and last mile, okay? Which
Yes.
one have you started with? Which one are you focused in more, or are you doing also looking at all of them and doing investments? What's going on there?
Do you mean particular in terms of projects or?
Yeah, projects or exploring kind of opportunities
Okay.
and disrupting the,
In the Middle East, that would be in two steps, because the work we started with RTA a few years ago is to prepare the stage where we actually can go with this technology in Dubai on open road, which is not the case today. Or actually, we're refraining from it, and for understandable reasons. In Europe, we can run on open roads. There's a lot of mitigation to put in place. We can't run anywhere, and that's the whole idea of a level 4 automation. In Dubai, the work is to start not necessarily with the final target, which is the first and last mile, but to start with bringing a mobility as a service solution for communities. The other idea, I grew up actually in this country. I know it quite well, and a lot of places in Dubai I love, and for instance, they're becoming more and more, and this is again a very personal opinion, more and more where you think twice before going there. I'm talking about the Dubai Marina, JBR. It's crowded. And that's because we are used in the Middle East of traveling with a personal car for any trip, even if we're making 500 meters. That's the main trend we're trying to shift together, and we're happy to be working with people like the RTA because they're conscious that autonomous is the future, yes, but if the autonomous future is not a shared one, that would create a huge mess in city centers. Can you imagine, instead of today having cars being driven by only one person on board and no passengers, which is as bad as it gets, if tomorrow you have autonomous personal cars, your car doesn't need to park at your work. It can go back, park at your house. That means you'll have one trip with one person on board and another trip with no one on board, so you'll double actually the congestion in city centers. So that's where we're trying to head. First and last mile, to provide a way of traveling together, actually.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just want to add to that. I think people are very open to this, right? I think there are several constraints that force people into their vehicles, into cars. For me personally, it's the weather, right? So if the weather is poor, I'm going to find the closest air-conditioned vehicle I can and jump into it. But I think that as we push forward, we're going to start to see more bikes. We're going to start to see more scooters. Hopefully, inshallah, we'll see more autonomous vehicles. But I think that people are ready and willing to use these forms of transport, and it's just a matter of getting them on the road.
Well, it's also about what you guys are both touching on is the shift in ownership models, right? Mm. So we're not really looking at car ownership, which was a staple for decades and decades. Yeah. What are some of Alan, I mean, you talk to these guys and they're exploring different models, the incumbents, so to speak, both manufacturers and dealers, importers. What are some of the models they're looking at and exploring, even though they may not have launched into them yet?
I think, yeah. I mean, there's one point before we just get stuck into the last or the first mile. There are some applications, and we will talk about it tomorrow in the presentation, whereby it knows where you are and where you want to go. And first thing in the morning, it will work out for you, is it best to take the bus? Is it best to take a Kareem, take your own car? But in many cases, if it's too congested, then it'll suggest, well, stay at home. And one of the interesting ones, Norway Ministry of Education have picked this up, and they are even exploring that if it's too congested, if it's there are too many traffic jams, then they could do Skype schools with the students. And it's the same with the people who are home-based, because if it's going to take you an hour and a half, whether you take the bus or, let's say, the best journey is for you to take the metro, but that's really, really congested, and it's going to be an hour, it's going to suggest to you that you work from home. So that's one of the things.
mobility.
So no mobility, yeah.
Thank you very much for coming. I'm glad you reached this positive visit.
Yeah, exactly, and that's, that's happening. But in terms of the OEMs, the race is on, and they are shifting from being an automotive vehicle manufacturer into a software company that happens to make good cars, nice cars. And it's all about gathering, it's all about connectivity, because at the moment cars don't talk to each other, and certainly the manufacturers doesn't talk to the consumers. But that's very, very important. So they're looking at the shift in the mind is we are no longer a car producing company, we're a software company that happens to make nice cars.
Okay. Back to the ownership models, though. So we have partial ownership. We have services where Audi has a service where it's called own the experience, not the car, where today you can drive an A8, tomorrow you can drive an SUV, depending on your needs, and you pay a couple $1,000s a month in the States.
Yep.
So which of these models will be the models that we'll see emerging, new models, besides the ones that we currently have over the next few years? Anybody wanna? Everyone looked at you, Ryan.
Yeah.
So I mean, our North Star is driving down car ownership, right? I'll speak from the perspective of when I was in venture capital. I saw a number of startups here in Dubai and across the region that were looking at shared ownership models. I mean, you see the success of companies like UDrive and eCar. They've done quite well, and people are ready and willing to shift to these ownership models. I think people are less and less interested in owning their own car. Again, going back to my earlier point, when you have these other modes of transportation available. And from what I saw, again, in my venture capital life, people were really excited about sharing their own personal vehicle with others, entering the sharing economy, making some extra cash, and for others, for the customers themselves, not having to own their own car.
Okay. So as we move also away from the traditional model of ownership, of course, the way we talk to customers in this all digital age is changing as well. So it's not anymore you put up a billboard, then they hear you on the radio, then they come in, you maybe do a test drive, and you close it. So as these new mobility solutions emerge, some of the B2C models are shifting to B2B, of course, where the sales happens in the B2B, so, but also at the same time, when we talk to customers, we have to talk differently to them, Mm-hmm. You look at, for example, of course, I'm going to throw a couple of trends at you. Please feel free to jump on whichever one you feel is more relevant. But one of them, of course, you look at Saudi, for example, a lot more women are participating, in the industry, and have the option at least, to participate. And also, car manufacturers traditionally didn't so much focus on advertising to women or to just kind of different generations and different things. What do you guys see in terms of the innovations in marketing and sales? And we talk about connectivity, we talked about machine learning, artificial intelligence. How can these things play a role in marketing better maybe to the consumer of tomorrow?
From my point of view, I'd still think that it would be an indirect marketing towards the end consumer. Mainly if we're talking about shared. As you said, the model somehow in mobility is shifting from a B2C to a B2B model. When we speak about public transport operators, it's different than speaking about someone who wants to buy a personal car. You don't have the same drivers. A public transport operator will mainly focus on return on investment, will have a certain latitude into learning how does it work. The final customer probably doesn't care how does it work and doesn't want to lose time understanding how it works. So that's some kind of the differences on our side, I'd say, in the marketing field, is try and focus on what really counts, without keeping in mind that the real factor at the end is the customer experience, the one who actually steps into the vehicle, sits in it, and makes the journey in it. But they're not probably today the main decision makers in this whole loop. But
Okay.
we still need to account for that, of course.
Yeah, I mean, interesting. But it is no longer about the ownership experience or the brand loyalty, because brand loyalty has gone out. What is more important to our lives is the variety, and it's those insta moments. So I don't necessarily want to be in an Audi, stuck in an Audi all the time, or Mercedes, or whatever the case may be. I'd rather have one day in a BMW and one day in a Lexus, etc. But in terms of, let's look at how you communicate to your market and etc. One of the most successful campaigns of Tesla has just done now is, with this, they have this technology called the dog friendly. So if you leave the dog in the car, it recognizes if it's getting too hot for the dogs, and then it starts the AC, etc. And what they did is actually they started going around schools making young children aware that you shouldn't leave the dog because it can get hot, they get suffocated, etc. And by the way, let's just show you how the Tesla model works. Now, quite incredibly, their sales is actually doing that, led by or driven by these young kids or these teenagers saying to mom and dad, we've got to get a Tesla, we've got to get a Tesla. It's that kind of innovation that works. No longer will it work that you put an ad in the newspaper or the traditional ways.
Of course, but we're also going to get a lot more data, of course, coming in. We have a lot of data, actually.
Yes.
Now, in this region, not all the data is necessarily connected, but when you talk about the data, what are some things we can do? What are some insights we can draw from that data? Hussein would be great to answer this question. This was more of his space. But is there any kind of, what may we do in terms of drawing insights from the data that we get on customers so that we can serve them better in this new mobility space?
Well,
Yeah, anyone, yeah.
Sorry.
Go for it.
No.
So I think from our side, obviously we're collecting millions and millions of data points, right? And that helps us as a company, so to understand, okay, where are people coming from, where are people going to, how long is it taking them to get there? Every single aspect of the trip is covered, right? How well are our captains performing? How well are our customers performing? Is there an issue there? So we're collecting all these data points, but also we're feeding this metadata back to local governments to help them with planning. So it's helping us and it's helping the local governments as well. And that's something that we continue to improve on as we build out our AI capabilities. And it's been very beneficial for us and hopefully for local governments as well.
Great. So it's more of an integration to actually improve, not just improve marketing for marketing's sake, but actually improve the customer experience and the service. And from what I heard, even though you may collect a lot of data, it's still beneficial for entities such as yours, Kareem, and governments to come together and share that data and across different entities. Yeah, the metadata, exactly. The metadata, so that better solutions can be developed together. Okay, exactly. Great. Okay, before we open it up to questions from the audience, I want to kind of finish on a bit of a note of kind of a high note, or more kind of looking into the future of, we've got new people, as the industry is getting disrupted, certain jobs are going to be gone, of course. We've got students now in university that are wondering what they should be doing. We got people doing startups and getting into that space and starting companies. How might a startup or a young person, first off, there's two questions, and I'll open it up to all three of you. First one is, what are some of the skill sets that you would recommend the younger generation develop as we enter this kind of uncertain space and as we're exploring this space? And secondly, also, how might a startup go about working with an OEM or with a Kareem or something, and partnering to develop even more interesting solutions. So, yeah.
I'll jump in with one question after another, and because I'm interested in both of them, they're very interesting. So the first one, about the skill set, I think what is required in the near future is not mainly some kind of a request regarding the skill set of people coming out of universities and everything. Talent is there. However, the way we see management in a startup or in an innovative company should be different than what would have been done in a more established and 80s, 90s corporation. The idea is young people are creative, let them be. That was the whole idea when we started EasyMile 4.5 years ago. Our CEO and founder decided to set up the company in Toulouse, which is in south of France. Now, one of the ideas behind that is that Toulouse has a nice airport that connects to a lot of European cities. So for us to be able to travel, that was interesting. However, that's not the main point. The main point is Toulouse is the Airbus headquarters. And you have a lot of either people coming from Airbus to wanting to work not in a company of 100,000 people, but in a company of 150 maximum. And other than that, universities, since Airbus is there, are focusing on a lot of innovative field, automation, and everything. So the idea is to try and get those people to us. So the main thing was to be interesting for them, and how to be interesting for a young mind than to let him have fun. That's the whole idea behind what helped us begin. What was the second question?
So the first one was on the skill set,
yeah.
and also the second one was, say there is established startups that want to partner with your good self,
sure.
or with an OEM or with a Kareem. How would they go about doing that, and what are some opportunities that can be explored there?
Sure. Well, typically for companies like EasyMile, the idea, as you said earlier, actually we're shifting towards a model where it's a software company, because we are a software company that happens to make autonomous vehicles. The idea is, since you're a software company, do not focus on a vehicle. Be vehicle agnostic, which is our case. So we try to partner as much as possible with OEMs, helping them develop their own autonomous line of vehicles. We started with the autonomous shuttle 4.5 years ago because it fitted the most use cases at that time. Since then, a year and a half ago, we partnered with TLD, which is the world leader in ground support equipment for airport, because they wanted us to automate a baggage tractor. The issue they had is that a baggage tractor driver is not a job you'll have a lot of people wanting to do that. So the idea is trying to shift from the need of drivers to the need of something else. A support function, technicians, deployment engineers. Those are the kind of jobs created instead of having a job that not a lot of people would actually be eager to doing it, because conditions are not as good as they can be. We're working with Iveco as well to develop a 12-meter autonomous bus due for next year. And that's the main idea today. You have very big players established in the market. They know how to do their business. They know how to build vehicles. It's not our business. We're a software company. Our business is to help them develop the autonomous part of the vehicles. And now to come to other players, I'm just impressed by the work Kareem is doing in the region, because typically that's the kind of players any startup of this kind would want to partner with, in a way that it's a match. It's what we provide, the smartness of the solution they provide as well, one platform, different transportation type, and actually have some kind of artificial intelligence in it to improve the passenger journey, because that's the end point of it. So
great. Well, he transitions. Let's
right
jump
to me.
around. We'll come back.
So on the first point, in terms of what I think that we look for in terms of employees or people, my personal view is that early on in their career, people should focus on building technical skill sets, That's not to say that that's a requirement by any means. What is a requirement is we look for passionate people, people that are focused on the region, people that want to come, maybe people that are from the region that have left to go study abroad and want to come back, or people that we look for people that want to stay here and who follow our mission. And I've worked for a lot of organizations before that have a mission statement and are not really values driven. Kareem is. And we seek that in every single person that we hire to simplify and improve the lives of people in the region. So that's, on that front, what we would look for. Getting to the other question, send us an email. That's the easiest way. Send me an email.
Okay.
We're open to discussions with everyone. And again, going back to our mission, anything that helps us achieve that, we're willing and excited to talk to startups in the region. It may be too early or not the right time to partner together, but we're definitely we'll definitely engage with anybody just to see how we could work together.
Great, great. Alan?
Yes, interesting. Volkswagen Group have just started their own new IT department because they recognize they need it for autonomous electric vehicles. What you've got to realize, for example, in a Bentley or in an Audi A8 has got more codes than a 777 Boeing or than a whole of the Android system put together. They reckon for the next 3 years they need about 8,000 software developers, coders, etc. So far, they only managed to attract 500. So if you're into software, that's definitely a big area. The other point as well, at the moment we have the technical skills to repair engines with the combustion. We don't have much experience in how do we repair vehicles with electric batteries, etc. So that's another point. But I think the other one is, which is very, very important, is the social apps. Because the biggest issue they have, the OEMs, is I don't have to concentrate on the road, eyes off the road, eyes off the steering wheel, eyes off the pedals. What do I do? How do I keep the kids engaged? How do I keep myself engaged? What do you do in that journey? And there are so many apps are being developed, from extreme of, I don't know, how do you maximize your time and Sudoku and all that kind of stuff, to apps that are doing speed dating because apparently shared drive or shared ride is a big thing for Tinder because then people have to meet, people.
No comment.
You're not part of that.
Moving on.
But yeah, so everything from the social skills to how do I keep the driver or the occupants occupied.
Great. Okay. At this point, we have just about 10 minutes. Do we have microphones? Do we have microphones, Nacha, for the audience? Please put your hands up. Any questions about the future of mobility? I will just ask that we don't ask company-specific questions to the guests, but we can ask anything about the topic or the technologies. So please, yes, one question, gentleman there in the middle.
Good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Zafar. I'm from logistics. My company name is Superbridge Logistics. My question is, since we are covering the innovation in transport, so we are covering the human transport. What about cargo transport, marine transport? Is there anything happening in that area, automation, and can you put some light on that?
You want to start off and
Yeah, I can.
add a little bit as well, actually.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ned.
On goods transport is not only something important now, but it's something bigger than passenger transport when it comes to automation. Because the areas we can deploy a level 4 automated system is much more easier if you're working on an airport. An airport is a safe environment, a highly controlled environment. You can control your communication with every other driver your automated system would be able to interact with. So transportation of goods is something trending highly now. Other topics, I wouldn't, on our side, an easy model, we're not doing it today, doesn't mean we're not going to do it in the future. I guess a lot of players are starting to look at it. And to give you an example on how is it perceived in the region, and especially in Dubai. The RTA is organizing this year the Dubai World Challenge for self-driving technologies. It's something that fits the vision of His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid on the fact that in 2030 in Dubai, 25% of total trips needs to be autonomous. However, that challenge this year is only focusing on first last mile, but that's not the end of it. It comes in 4 parts, and one of those parts is marine transportation. And it should be autonomous. I don't know where that part of the challenge will be released, but marine is there, and the RTA is working on it. Goods transportation is a third part of the challenge as well. So it's trending out there. It's probably not the most immediate priority, but something is being done about it.
Yes. So
90% cargo moved by sea, by marine. So that is not a small area.
Yeah.
This is huge.
Yeah.
So there's actually a lot of interesting discussions, exactly what you said. For example, here we're dealing with a company like Maersk handling all the shipment of all these containers. The questions that at Amina, we're doing a white paper on the future of mobility, and we're considering this. So we've been having talks with a couple of people at the ports and different players in terms of what they're doing in that space. And all the things we mentioned were from automating trucks and the way containers are handled, to going straight from a container to a drone picking up that good and delivering it. So again, the value chain that we currently have to have from the port to the freight forwarder to the delivery to the endpoint, that model, just like the passenger model is getting disrupted, that model is going to get disrupted too. And just like it is a race of new players and existing players deciding where to play, it's the same there. To be honest with you, I don't see a company like Maersk today, at least, playing that much of a role. But I would look at both startups, the freight forwarders, being very active in that space and looking what they can do, and of course the ports. I mean, you look at DP World, they own a lot of ports around the world. So if a solution is rolled out here that can save things, and by the way, they're testing a lot of solutions right now. So we may not see them today, but we will in the very near future. So these things would roll out around the world at many different ports, you know. So those are the developments we see there, and that will change completely as well. Anything on deliveries or is there anything you guys want to?
Yeah, so as Karim, we've entered it's not autonomous yet, but we've entered the delivery space. So if anybody's used Karim Box, it's a lifesaver, especially if you forget your charger at home.
Is it on the same app as the?
Same app,
Great.
very easy to use, very intuitive. I see huge opportunity. I agree with you that cross-border freight is massive, especially in the region. I read something the other day that said it was a $30 billion plus industry just between the UAE and Saudi. So I definitely see room for disruption there. I've seen a number of startups pop up in the freight forwarding space. I can't comment specifically on marine freight, but again, I think this is an area that everybody should be exploring.
Great. Can we get another question, please? That first question was so good. Now we set the bar quite high. Now let's see. Nobody wants to ask. Great. Any questions? Yes, in the back there, please.
Alexander, I'm Chief Technologist for Securo Group. It's a company working in the sphere of security solutions. And my question is, in what you're doing right now, gentlemen, right? Do you see that innovations will come from the bright ideas and applications, or from integrations? As today we see that a huge number of applications and resources are available, but we have them as a zoo. So they're not working, collaborating together, and this sometimes does not bring value to the end customer. So what's your position on this side, like going more into integrations? Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen.
Sorry, integrations with other players. Sorry, can you just clarify? Yeah, so I think I think on our side, I alluded to this earlier, but we see that there are a number of ideas popping up in the ecosystem that we would like to collaborate with. So I think it depends strongly on the context and who the player is and how they fit in with us and our mission and our strategic planning. But I definitely agree that there's a big pool of ideas that sit outside of larger companies that need to be integrated with these companies, and we need to be working together. I can't comment on anybody specifically, but...
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think it's both. one of the things that the whole automotive industry was caught out in the cold is when Tesla came in and disrupted. And hence you're seeing two things. There's never a day goes by without an OEM buying some form of a startup or a software company, and that's number one. But then they realize it needs an awful lot, it needs a bigger pool of cash. So what they started to do is you see the JVs now. So BMW is working with Mercedes, and Mercedes is working with VW, etc. So I think it's a bit of both. So at the moment, and they are running parallel, both, they're working with the Silicon Valleys of this world, but they also have recognized that they need to have their own R&D centers, and hence the one we talked about in Portugal, which will be followed again by BMW and Mercedes. So everybody is working towards that, but it'll probably be both.
Yeah, okay. One more question? Yes, please. Could we get a microphone in the front row here, please? Third seat, front row. Perfect. Great.
One good example also.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. About the collaboration between Audi, Amazon, and the DHL, where Audi cars now enable their owners to get their Amazon delivered directly to their cars using a digital platform. This is also non-passenger application for the digital business transformation.
Do you have a question or?
No, this
Oh,
is
the
just
comment,
a
of
comment,
course.
Helping
Oh yeah,
about
to answer the
Yeah,
question.
very
I'll
good.
answer.
Yeah.
So absolutely, you're right. What they're doing right now is, as you mentioned perfectly, is they will have access to the trunk of the car, and they can put the deliveries in the back with Amazon, DHL. Exactly. That's a great use case of people working three totally different companies coming together to deliver value. 100%. Great. Any questions? Yes, please. I think that will be the final question.
Dulcis in fundi. That's Latin. Means the best comes at the end.
Yes, we've saved the best for last.
Thank
Exactly.
you. Bijan Majidi, CEO of Dinamica International and Dinamica Automotive. In particular to a friend from with the automotive specific old style industry experience. Don't you think that the OEMs are still dug into their old way of doing things, and they have not yet figured it out what hit them and what will hit them? And it's not only about electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, or put the cat in the trunk and the mouse in the... They're still selling, ordering cars with the old 100 years ago 3-tier distribution and supply and make to stock. I mean, we're talking 25 releases ago. Now, they figured it out that, oh my God, e-commerce is gonna hit us. Oh my God, my dealers are going to disappear because now Tesla has decided to close their dealerships. How come? Yeah. I mean, we're talking about how to send somebody on Mars when still don't know how to cook in our own kitchen. I mean, this is a question to you. Sure. Don't you think we are really, and by the way, I personally think the OEMs, they need not one generation, 2 generational changes. They still do not understand that innovation doesn't come from the IT department, but comes from the CEO and the overall change of their way of doing. Thank you.
Thank you. My problem is I've got my chief strategist sitting here, and my head of editorial is sitting there disguising himself. If I say anything that is contrary to what I should be saying, I'll get into deep, deep trouble. But I'll quote you something, and this is not me, just for the record. Somebody said to me, you know, the automotive industry, it has fallen off the 44th floor. It has gone past the 28th floor and thinking, business as usual, everything is good. But in reality, I think they have woken up. Some of them have, some of them haven't. Some of them...
Means that the crash can survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they, at least they look down and thought, we need a parachute. But some of them have woken up, and some of them haven't. And they are still stuck in the old, yeah, no, this is how we do it, this is exactly how we do it, and this was a discussion we were having yesterday. You have a CEO of a company comes out publicly saying, look, we need to make that mind shift in the sense that we're not a car company, we're a software company. The others, and unfortunately, they still stuck at, well, we'll be very much product driven, we'll delight our customers, we'll do this, we'll do that. Meanwhile, Tesla, the minute they recognized, and this is how the sense of urgency, because Tesla is a speedboat. If they have to turn left, they just do this and they turn left. A lot of the OEMs, unfortunately, that are big tankers, if they have to turn right, they have to plan it 5 days in advance. And when Tesla recognized that, they're not cheap enough, the minute they closed, they did the maths. If they close the showrooms, they can afford models at $35,000, and they executed. And the reason why they executed is because the guy, if you ever send an email to Elon Musk, he will reply to you within 24 hours. Yeah. Now you try and get an appointment with any of the OEMs, wherever they are, it'll take you 6 months. They have a sense of urgency and they react to the market. So Tesla, with their showrooms, whatever, they did it for about a year. It didn't work. They closed. And now they can afford. And the minute they closed, by the way, before, and all the manufacturers, they said, it didn't work, this, that, and the other. The next day, they announced you can have a Tesla for $35,000. And again, it was just, he stunned them. Love or hate the guy, it really doesn't matter, but he'll go down in history as the person who changed the automotive industry.
To also add to Alan's point as well, one of the things we're seeing, especially in our conversations, is all of them they realize they can't stop being what they are today and be Tesla or disruptive, because that's not their whole entire business is set up as a traditional business model. So a lot of the challenges they have is how do they continue business as usual and build out the business of tomorrow. And that's the kind of race that's going on. Now, some of the OEMs we've seen they're moving quickly. They're relatively quickly compared to what they've been doing. And some are not, and we will see. And I mean, the market will decide whether the ones that move too slow, whether they should still be around or not. It's as simple as that.
And just to add, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just to add one very, very quick thing. Everybody criticized the Chinese because they said they just copy and paste, the engine from Mitsubishi, old engine, the gearbox from Isuzu, whatever. What we didn't realize is they have been concentrating on electric vehicles, and they have some of the advanced technology electric vehicle. They bypassed the combustion engine, and now, they're absolutely leading by example.
I'd love to add just a little thing as well. Don't bury them too fast. Yeah. In a way that we work with a lot of OEMs in Europe. Unfortunately, I cannot disclose the names, but they come to us saying, "This is the vehicles, make them autonomous." No. No more than that.
We still won't name any names.
I would not mention any names.
Course, yeah.
However, from that relationship, we realized two things. First, they have the resources internally to make things happen, but they have a huge inertia we don't have at EasyMall. We're at a head count 170. If we want to make something happen, we have less buttons to push internally to make that happen. The second thing, which is probably the most important, their time to market is much huger than EasyMiles or any other small player, I'd say, or new player. And something popped up as well. There's a third thing. They have way much more to lose than any new player. Regarding the time to market, if Nissan or changes any sensor, like literally a €0.5 sensor on the vehicle, they would need like 1.5 years of certification phase to make it happen. We do not need that. Tesla probably does not do that. So that's what makes young companies more active on this field. However, I truly believe OEMs are not to be buried that fast. They're working on things. They cannot communicate on it because their time to market is huge.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Anything else you want to add? Or? Oh, great. All right. At this point, I'd like to thank you very much for that great question as well. Thank you. Can we please give a round of applause? Panelists, please stand
Thank
up.
you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.